The National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Chattanooga chapter, presents the 2021 Black Pioneer Women of Excellence. Dr. Lanita L. Davidson, Mrs. Ruthie M. Hereford, and Miss Willie L. McClendon.
Well, first of all, my name is Lanita Davidson, and I'm a native of Washington, D.C. Grew up in Washington, attended public schools in Washington. I guess you could say I'm a product of the end of the Jim Crow era, which I didn't realize how significant Jim Crow was until my brother and I transferred to a predominantly black elementary school to a predominantly white school, and boy, were my eyes opened. The rooms were bright, the lights were bright, the books were new, so much unlike the previous school that we transferred from. But it was home. After elementary school, I went on through public schools and a very proud graduate of Dunbar High School, named after Paul Laurence Dunbar, whose parents had been slaves prior to the Civil War. After I left Dunbar, I received a scholarship to Knoxville College, or HBCU, that I didn't even know I was getting because my guidance counselor obtained that scholarship for me unbeknown to me. I knew nothing about Tennessee. If it wasn't Maryland or Virginia or New York or Delaware, I was lost. But I enjoyed my years at a HBCU. After graduation from Knoxville College with a BS, I went on to get a master's degree, an EDS degree, and a doctorate degree, all in education, even though education was not necessarily the field I wanted to pursue at that particular time in my life. Strange. Actually, education was not my chosen profession. I was a pre-law major. But my dad, being my dad, he always wanted us to have a plan B. And during the time that I was in colleges, there was a great demand, a true shortage for teachers for many reasons I won't go into. And he said, "You need to get your teaching license." I said, "Well, Dad, I don't want to teach. I don't want to teach." He said, "Well, you need to get it anyhow." So I did get my teaching license because my plans were to go to law school after undergrad school. And well, he very candidly told me, "Well, I'm not paying for it." So I taught for a year, and I enjoyed teaching high school. I taught high school government and high school American history at Woodrow Wilson High School in Washington. I enjoyed the interaction so much with my kids, I decided to put law school off for another year, which I did. And right after that year, I relocated with my husband to Chattanooga and continued to teach. And I really, really fell in love with education when I was assigned to an inner city junior high school, which at that time was Alton Park. I loved Alton Park. I loved the students. I set a goal for myself while I was teaching, and that goal was every year I want my students to come out excited about learning. Not only excited, but be able to take that learning and connect it with their everyday life. Because without that, education really means nothing. You've got to be able to apply that learning to your everyday life. So I stayed in education to the point that I decided to become a principal. I became a director of personnel, assistant superintendent, even a superintendent. In fact, I became the first female principal of Howard High School in 1990. At that time, it was renamed Howard School of Academics and Technology, which that experience was the culminating of all experiences for me. A high school principal has an opportunity to see a school district from the whole 360 degrees because you've seen kids come up from the lower grades all the way through to their culminating public school experience. So I stayed in education, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Who was a mentor or inspiration to you growing up, and why?
That's a difficult question because I didn't have any adult mentors. I had two classmates, high school classmates, that we were so close that we mentored each other. We did our homework together. We did our college applications together, and we even helped each other through college, even though we went to 3 different colleges. I really didn't have mentors or coaches until I went into administration in Chattanooga with the Chattanooga Public Schools. And I did have 4 people. Dr. Clifford Hendricks. I had Tom Cannon, who later went on to become an assistant commissioner here in Tennessee. Stu Silverman, who became a superintendent in 2 school districts in Kentucky. And Dr. Charles Hyden, who was my law professor at UTC, who every time pounded me, you need to go to law school. You need to get out of education, go to law school. They were my coaches. And when I look back at my coaches, including my dad, they were all men. They were all men. My priority hope would be that all students would have the experience of a pre-K-12 quality, rigorous education regardless of their economic background, and that education being delivered by high-performing teachers. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say I want better health care. I want ongoing adult education, especially when it comes to voting and census, all those things that people take for granted but don't do. I would love to see in this county more public housing for seniors and the disabled so they can age in place and not necessarily have to be confined to less desirable facilities. And I would be remiss if I didn't say I'd like to see the end of racism, sexism, and all discriminatory practices for all people. And when I say all means all.
Well, my name is Ruthie Herford. I am a proud member of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Chattanooga Chapter Incorporated, of which I am currently serving as their first Vice President of Programs. And my story started actually 76 years ago in a small town in Oklahoma called Green Pastures, which eventually became Oklahoma City. And that is where my education started. I was raised and educated in the Oklahoma public school system. We were fortunate enough to be a part of a group of students who integrated the first high school in Oklahoma, Star Spencer. And I graduated in the upper third of my class and went on to work and also to get my education. I worked most of my life and I went to school, and during that time I raised a family, a son and a nephew. And most of the job was related to education in some form, working for a telecommunication company as an instructor. That is where I taught adults. And then my elementary education kicked in 1996 after I retired, and I went to teaching elementary students for about 5 years in California and then another 5 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. But also taught as an interventionist once I retired from education here in Chattanooga, and also in the church as far as Vacation Bible School or Sunday school. Actually, I'm a lifelong learner. I've always been open to education, and as I said, I was in education when I went to California, but I have always wanted to educate our young people. And so it's been a passion of mine. And as I was in school, I had a mentor, a high school English teacher, who saw something in me, and he had empathy and compassion. Being in an integrated school, there were some injustices. So I think that lit a fire in me to seek out any way I could to impart my knowledge with others. And so that took me to teaching, as I said, for the phone company, and then also with the children. And when I started teaching elementary, I just really felt like I had gotten in my own little comfort zone where I could really relate to the students. And so many of them were lacking and were not proficient. So it always inspired me and gave me such joy to see the students learn. And so that has been my motto, is to just help. If I could just help someone along the way, then my living wouldn't be in vain. Well, first I want to say my parents, my mother and father, were a big inspiration, because out of 11, I am the 10th of 11 kids, and although they were not highly educated, education was always the topic in our family. Getting an education so we could improve our socioeconomic status, but also that was a way to show that if we continue to work hard and if we went to school, that we would always be self-sufficient. And so my parents, and I had older siblings that also would inspire us to go on. And later in my educational field in Chattanooga, I have to say there was a lady, the first day I reported to Wolf Teeper Creek Elementary, Anita Horton showed up at the door and kind of guided me. And then later, the next year or so, Annie Darden, who was a guidance counselor, was my mentor. And I've had others along the way, but those are the ones that come to mind right now. I hope and I pray daily that our youth will not always be judged by the color of their skin, that they are given an opportunity, no matter what backgrounds or neighborhoods they come from or zip codes, that we will continue to look at those youth and to embrace them and know that, yes, there are flaws. We all have flaws, but we want to make sure that they know that they have a sense of value, that they're worthy, and that we're not always preaching to them, but that we are trying to give positive advice and guidance to them. And so my hope is to one day live without a lot of the criticisms, the negativity, and the violence. And I think that if we, as parents and adults and educators, and all of us as a neighborhood, wrap our arms around each other and in particular our youth, we will see that they will begin to show their strengths, and they will pull themselves up if they have an issue, and they will become productive citizens.
I was born here in Chattanooga. I am a Chattanoogan. I was raised by my grandparents, born in their home, and they would not let my parents take me. So I guess you would say I'm a spoiled child. attended public schools, attended public school, many of them depending on where I started out at Joseph E. Smith School, Calvin Dunson, Trotter, and then Howard High School. I graduated from Howard High School. And then went on to take some classes at Chattanooga State and also at UTC as well. That is my beginning. And I belong to Wesley Chapel Christian Community Church, and the pastor was very involved in what was going on in the community. So in fact, I marched. I led songs as we marched. Went to Washington marching, and coming back to home to spread the word that we don't have to take this. You don't have to take certain things because we have rights. And I continue to do that. I'm on WNOO radio, and we do a talk show from 11:30 to 12 is chat time with Sister M. And in the afternoon from 2 to 3, I do community awareness. And that program is where we talk about what's going on in the community and inform our listeners of what they should be doing to be a part of making Chattanooga a better place. Basically, looking at TV and seeing how people were being treated just because they wanted to register to vote, wanted to be treated as citizens. And so as I looked at that, and as I would see, and I was reading up on Dr. Martin Luther King, and then I knew Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian. I was readily involved in the marches, in the meetings, here in Chattanooga, in Atlanta, wherever we needed to go to be a part of the making a change for our people. My grandparents. And then it would be Reverend Wright and Al Hobbs. And that's because they kept encouraging, they could see in me what I couldn't see. And they kept encouraging me to do certain things. So it's because of them that I really do what I do today. And that is being a radio announcer at WNOO, Clear Media. And so it's just been a wonderful, wonderful, I guess you could say a wonderful life of being able to work with people, being able to talk to different people, being able to encourage them, and especially our young people, wanting them to know that there is a better life and that you need an education. I don't know why some of the kids think that they don't have to have an education now. So when I have an opportunity to talk to them, I do. Several years ago, I organized a Chattanooga Youth Choir. And I can say I'm really proud of that because it was community-based. And all of our kids, except we had maybe 100 or so, but I can tell you that everybody made it, maybe except 5. And today, they still say Sister Willie. I'm hopeful that we will be recognized as a people, and be treated the same way as you treat somebody else that may not be our color. I hope, it's my hope and my dream that we will not have to continue to fight to be able to vote, because that's our right. But for whatever reason, they don't want us, people of color, to vote. And it's my hope that whatever I can do to inspire people to vote and be a part of the electoral process, that's what we'll do.